Chantal Roberts, and I'm a nationally recognized insurance thought leader regarding claims handling practices and procedures. Today on The Art of Adjusting, we're discussing the word incurred. This is important because many policies will not pay recoverable depreciation or replacement cost value, overhead and profit, or ordinance and law coverages unless the insured first, quote, incurs, end quote, the expense. But what does this mean? As we discussed in week 14, insurance policies are contracts of adhesion, which means that the insurer wrote the policy, and if there's any confusion or ambiguity about coverage, the insurer must give the benefit of the doubt to the insured and allow coverage. In other words, the insurer, if the insurer wanted to exclude something or cover something, it should have written that into the policy in a more clear manner. So when there's ambiguity in a word, the courts look to the plain and ordinary meaning, and this is usually the dictionary's meaning. So Merriam-Webster.com, their definition for incurred is to become liable or subject to bring upon oneself. And in fact, they use the example to incur expenses. The Cambridge Dictionary Online defines incur as to experience something usually unpleasant as a result of actions that you have taken. And again, they use the example to incur debts, fines, and bills. Black's Law Dictionary, which is what a lot of attorneys use, they define incurred as to bring upon yourself or to cause something to happen to yourself. So why is this a big deal? Well, in the homeowners HO3 policy, which is what most people have when they have a homeowner's policy, the ordinance and law coverage says that you may use up to 10% of the limit of liability that applies to coverage A, which is for the building, for the increased cost you incur due to the enforcement of any ordinance or law which the state regulates. And then it goes on to talk about construction, demolition, remodeling, et cetera, which is what you would have when you have an accident. Now, many contractors are putting in ordinance, law, code upgrades into their estimates, but then they don't carry out the work. And that may be at the behest of the insured, or it may be a way for the contractor to get extra money out of the insurance company. Regardless, the insurers feel that the insured is being paid for something that wasn't done. So in essence, the insured is profiting from an insurance claim. So for example, let's say that you bought some groceries with a credit card. You've incurred the expense because you've got the groceries. And when you get the bill at the end of the month, you pay it. If you don't, you've stolen the food, right? Okay, so since profiting from an insurance claim is considered to be fraud or stealing, insurers have begun not to pay this code upgrades, overhead and profit, recoverable depreciation until the insured has paid for the repairs himself. And therefore, he is then reimbursed, which is different, by the carrier. So in our grocery store example, you've incurred the expenses, but at this time, your job, for example, won't give you your paycheck so that you can pay the credit card bill until you've paid the credit card bill. So in essence, your employer is reimbursing you for the expenditure. But this is not the plain meaning of the word incur. So now some carriers are using the phrase paid and incur or incur and pay in their policies, since again, we have to circle back to contracts of adhesion. And if the insurers don't want to do something, they need to write their policies a little bit more clearer. Now, adjusters and insureds are encouraged to read the policy and know the jurisdiction's interpretation of the words. Because, for example, the Florida Supreme Court opined that incurred means to have the expense, but not necessarily pay for it. So in Florida, if they don't have the, quote, incur and pay, end of quote, provision, then the carriers would have to pay this policy, this coverage. when the insured has it, rather than waiting till the insured does the work. A New York Superior Court said incurred means liable for, and if the insured meant, quote, paid for, end of quote, it could have used the word, quote, suffered, as in the insured suffered damages when he incurred the loss. So this week I talked about the word incur. Adjusters are advised to review policy language in the plain meaning of the word and discuss it with their managers and perhaps counsel. Every claim is different and every insurer has different protocols for handling losses. However, this being in the litigated world we're in, see below for some legalese. Few claims go to a jury trial, and picking the expert who has been deposed the most or who has gone to trial the most may not be the correct expert. Failing to have a second set of eyes on the claim in order to save some expenses isn't always the best way to resolve a loss. As an expert witness and a former claims adjuster, I'm sharing my experiences in the art of adjusting. Thank you for watching. I appreciate your time.